of some new strategy which is about incorporating Ireland more and more with big Western imperialist powers and with NATO. The latest is we're going to have an announcement tomorrow in terms of maritime security that's going to be about deeper cooperation with the old colonial powers of Britain and of France and deeper cooperation with NATO. At the same time, the government with a straight face will tell you we have no intention of getting rid of neutrality. Our attempts to dismantle the triple lock have nothing to do with neutrality whatsoever, and yet they are successively signing us up for more and more integration into the Western US-led military alliance called NATO, and we will be vociferously opposing this continued drive to undermine our neutrality. Then just finally, yesterday our candidate in Dublin Central, Ono Canavan, issued an open letter to other candidates of the left in Dublin Central calling for a vote left, transfer left pact on the basis of clear left principles. I am the Director of Elections for People Before Profit in Dublin Central and will be following up with the other parties in the next... We've already written to the other parties, but following up in the next week or so to seek meetings and to try to get this further. There is progress in Galway in this direction, as I understand, but again, our candidate, Denman Rook, is pushing further in that direction in Galway, because I think it's vital that the victory of Catherine Connolly in the presidential election, the victory of the left, is carried through into the by-elections. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are defeated, and that we continue a momentum towards the possibility of getting rid of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael at the next general election. Leave it there.
Cheers, Paul. First of all, it is very clear that protest, people power and the threat of escalating protests have forced the government to abandon their misguided and devastating cuts to SNAs in our schools. And that is a very, very big victory for people power, for the SNAs, for teachers, for school communities, and obviously for the children, both those with additional needs and the wider classes who would have been very severely and negatively impacted by these cuts going through. My own former primary school was very much at the epicentre of this crisis. It was highlighted widely at Johnstown National School as one of the schools that was facing one of the most severe attacks, of a reduction from 9 SNAs to less than 4. And I attended a meeting down there yesterday where all of the local primary schools in my area, there was probably about 10 or 15 schools represented, and the Minister for Health, Jennifer Carroll McNeill, was present, and to say that the government were put under pressure by school communities such as my own former primary school would be a major understatement. And the Minister mentioned at the meeting that she was heading into a meeting with Hildegard Naughton and Minister Moynihan later in the day to discuss the issue, and at that point the government hadn't decided what they were going to do about the whole issue, but now we have the government rightly being forced to abandon these disastrous cuts, these devastating cuts. It's clearly as a result of protests, but important to say that those protests are going to continue because while the immediate threat of SNA cuts, which would have been devastating, has been removed, there are still issues that remain unresolved. At the meeting yesterday, the school communities, the principals, the SNAs, they want the 2014 circular, which is an absolute insult, frankly, to school communities, children with special needs, in that it fails to acknowledge those with special needs that aren't medical needs, that is rewritten as a matter of urgency, and that there's a recognition by the government that as an absolute minimum we need 2 adults in every class, and beyond that we need to reduce teacher-pupil ratios and massively improve the special needs supports that are available for children. The teachers at the meeting I was at yesterday actually produced some pretty devastating statistics about how the applications for special needs supports, only a tiny fraction of those are actually met with the allocation of SNAs. So there's a long way to go yet for the government to actually show they're committed to supporting our school communities and children with special needs, and the SNAs and the teachers themselves. Secondly, we will be highlighting strongly this week the demonstration, the Affordable Ireland and Disability Groups demonstration that's taking place this Saturday, because if protest has worked on special needs, it can also work on the issue of disabilities. So I just want to remind the government that there's going to be a major demonstration with a very broad coalition of disability groups, trade union groups, student union groups, political parties mobilising this Saturday, demanding an emergency winter payment for those with disability and a cost of disability payment. And already the signs are on it that protest is working, because it is not a coincidence that in the week that this demonstration is happening, the government are now running ads on the radio. People will have heard them saying they want to hear from the public about a cost of disability payment and what their thoughts on it. So clearly the government are on the back foot, rightly, over their failure to provide a cost of disability payment, to provide the emergency winter payment, and to address wider cost of living issues, which the demonstration will also be taking up. So that is something we will put strongly to the government, and there's going to be a major mobilisation towards that demonstration next Saturday in Dublin. Very finally, I just want to mention, I see there's Eamon Ryan has been promoting Dún Laoghaire Harbour as a naval base, as a major naval base, in the context of all this talk about the threats to this country and so on, that are being used to justify the push by the Irish government towards greater militarisation, towards dismantling our neutrality. But I just want to say that while Navy ships have been coming into Dún Laoghaire Harbour forever, and nobody has any difficulty with them, the idea that Dún Laoghaire Harbour is going to be turned into a naval base is not something I think will be taken kindly to by the people of Dún Laoghaire. There's a long-standing demand for Dún Laoghaire Harbour to be redeveloped for public amenities, for sea-based activities, maritime activities, and to celebrate the unique heritage of Dún Laoghaire Harbour. We do not want it turned into a military base or indeed a target for military action, although we're quite happy, as has always been the case, for Navy ships to come in and out of the harbour. Okay, so just to raise two issues. I think we've seen the power of parents, pupils and staff working together to push the government back in relation to the SNA cull, which they're calling a review. Clearly there was an attempt being made to shift SNAs out of mainstream school into special schools and to leave teachers struggling with the consequences of that. 19 million has been miraculously found, which I think speaks to the fact that the money is not an issue at all. But I think the review is paused, it is not stopped, and parents are going to be protesting here outside the Dáil tomorrow at 5 p.m. with students, and I think the government should take note that you mess around with the disabled community, mess around with people who are neurodivergent, you do so at your peril, because they've shown this in relation to referendums, they've shown it in relation to the Green Paper that had to be pushed back, and they've shown it again this week. The mere mention of taking SNAs out of schools en masse provoked a massive backlash, and the government is absolutely reeling over it. And fair play, particularly to those who protested, but just the wrath that they were facing, I'd say, out in their constituencies. I would say as well, this isn't over, because the policy of only allocating SNAs on the basis of physical and primary needs is very damaging, because they're needed for so much more, and that would involve taking huge amounts out of schools. So I think the pressure needs to be kept up until we have also as well special education teachers. It's very easy to focus on SNAs, but we don't have enough teachers in schools, and we should have smaller classes to cater for everybody. I want to take up the issue of gender-based violence. I'm glad that the awarding of a Scott Medal to a guard who used a firearm against his own wife, who had to apologise to her,
who was named in a corrupt tribunal, is getting some attention this week. And I would repeat that Scott medal should be withdrawn on the basis of the Garda Commissioner ignoring, while they're running themselves a study into gender-based violence within the Gardaí, ignoring the fact that a member has committed gender-based violence can still be awarded a medal for bravery is absolutely outrageous. And I think it should never happen again. I think the National Women's Council has talked about difficulties that people who contact the Gardaí over gender violence are having. Seems to be a lack of training and a cultural problem. There's a similar problem in the Army. I've taken up the case of a woman who was very badly harassed and abused by an Army officer. She's still no further in terms of knowing what's going to be done by the Army about that. The Victims Directive doesn't apply in the Army, which is outrageous. So a victim has no right to know how their case is being pursued, and the Army court martials can still be used, their own separate form of justice. I'll also be raising tomorrow the case of the UCD medical student who I've highlighted and which has got massive traction. That student is the only person who has suffered arising from being raped by a student, another UCD student. She's the one who suffered. She's the one who hasn't been able to pursue her medical studies. She's the one who had the image shared, to countless people. And the policies and the institutions like UCD and other universities, it being the biggest in the country, are so far behind where they need to be. And I would lastly mention Trump and the Epstein files. I mean, is violence against children and women and boys taken seriously at all in this society? The fact that the Taoiseach can still go, smile, pass a bowl of shamrock to somebody. Trump is named more times in the Epstein files than Jesus' name appears in the Bible. That is the reality. And that's just going to be ignored. And that sends a really dangerous message out there to survivors, to people who've come forward, and to women generally in this society. You can talk about zero tolerance and you can befriend a man like that.